My name is Helen. I've been called many things in my life. Teacher, wife, mother, even saint, depending on who you ask. But until that night, I had never been called a burden. Not to my face. I'd spent the whole afternoon preparing dinner. Chicken roast, garlic mash, that lemon tart my daughter-in-law pretends not to like but always finishes. I wanted it to be perfect, warm, welcoming. Just like I used to do when Colin was a boy and scraped his knees playing soccer. I thought if I could just keep being the mother I always was, maybe he'd still be the boy who used to kiss my hand after dinner and say, "Thank you, Mama." Colin arrived late, as usual, with Vanessa in her designer heels and hollow smile. She kissed the air beside my cheek. "The house smells cozy," she said, already scrolling through her phone. The table was set for 8. My sister June was there, along with the neighbors, Mr. and Mrs. Patel, who've known Colin since he was in diapers. Everyone was already halfway through their drinks by the time Colin finally graced us with his presence. I carved the chicken myself. Served everyone with a smile. Even poured extra gravy on Colin's plate like I always used to. Old habits don't die easy. And then it happened. "I mean seriously," Colin said, cutting into the roast. "How long are we going to keep pretending this is normal?" I looked up from my plate. "Pretending what is normal, dear?" He didn't even look at me when he said it. "You living off us like this? We're not exactly millionaires, Mom." There was a pause. A long one. "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He laughed. "Come on, Mom. The money every month? The calls about your prescriptions, the ride requests, the help with taxes? Vanessa and I were just talking. We're basically your retirement plan." Vanessa chuckled, sipping her wine. "You said it first." She's like, eating away the inheritance. The table went quiet. Even the Patels didn't know where to look. I couldn't breathe for a moment. My hands were still in my lap, napkin folded neatly. I opened my mouth to speak, but nothing came out. "Colin," June whispered, horrified. "That's your mother." Colin waved her off. "I'm just saying what no one else will. I've got a family to support." Vanessa smiled at him like he'd just delivered a TED Talk. I excused myself to the kitchen before the tears came. I stood at the sink, washing dishes no one offered to help with. I scrubbed so hard my fingers went raw. The sound of plates clinking, chairs dragging, shoes clicking, faded into silence as they all left. Not one of them stepped inside to check on me. Not even my son. By the time the kitchen was clean, the clock read 11:03 p.m. The lemon tart was untouched. I went to the hallway and unlocked the cabinet I hadn't opened in over a decade. There it was. A weathered manila envelope. Inside, years of receipts. Proof of wire transfers. Credit card statements I paid in full when Colin couldn't make ends meet. Notes from doctors I helped him access. And beneath them all, folded perfectly in half, the thing I'd forgotten was even there. The loan agreement. $75,000. Dated and signed. Colin's signature, messy and desperate, right under mine. I sank into my armchair, the document trembling in my hands. He was just 28 when he begged me for that money. His startup had failed, his credit was destroyed, and he'd lost his apartment. He called me in tears. Told me he'd be on the street if I didn't help. I remember thinking, asterisk, he's still my little boy. Of course I'll help. That's what mothers do. Asterisk. But I made him sign that paper. Not because I wanted the money back, but because something deep inside me had whispered, "One day, you might need this." I never mentioned it again. Even when he started making money again. Even when I saw him and Vanessa posting beach selfies while I clipped coupons for groceries. I told myself it wasn't about repayment. It was about love. But love doesn't humiliate you in front of neighbors. Love doesn't call you a burden over roast chicken. Love doesn't laugh at you like you're a guest overstaying your welcome in the home you paid the down payment for. That night I didn't sleep. I stayed in my chair, reading every line of that agreement, over and over. I thought of my late husband, Henry. What would he have said if he were still alive? He always said Colin was spoiled. "You baby him too much, Helen," he used to warn me. "One day he'll forget where the milk came from." Well, Henry was right. And I was done letting myself be poured dry. The next morning, I called Miriam. She was the only lawyer I trusted, and also the only friend who wouldn't say, "Just let it go." "Miriam," I said, my voice shaking but sure. "I need to know if an old loan agreement still holds in court." She didn't ask why. She just replied, "Bring it over." And Helen, good for you. As I got dressed to leave, I looked at myself in the mirror. Same cardigan. Same gray strands. Same gentle eyes. But something inside me had changed. That night at dinner, they thought they were cutting me down. What they didn't know is, I still had the receipts. I sat at Miriam's kitchen table, clutching the manila envelope like it was a bomb. She made us both tea, black, strong, no sugar, the way I used to drink it when I still had to be sharp at faculty meetings. She hadn't changed much since law school, just more wrinkles and more wisdom. "Well," she said, opening the folder, "this is quite a paper trail." "I never intended to use it," I said softly. "Not until now." She skimmed the loan agreement. "Helen, this is solid. Dated. Signed. Witnessed. The interest clause is simple, too. You could file tomorrow and win. Easily." "But it's my son, Miriam." She paused, then met my eyes. "And you're not just a mother anymore. You're a woman who's been taken advantage of." I stared at the teacup. There was a crack down the side I hadn't noticed before. Funny how you can look at something for years and only just see it's been broken for a long time. "Do you remember," I said, "when he came to me about that money? He'd just lost his job. Vanessa was threatening to leave. He cried right on this porch, said he was ashamed to ask. And then he took your money and never looked back." I nodded. He had promised to pay me back with the first profits from his new venture, some kind of tech consulting firm. I even helped him write the pitch deck. He was so convincing. But years passed. The business changed names twice, and eventually, I stopped asking. Instead, I gave more. Quietly. Willingly. Stupidly. Tuition for his kids' private preschool. A new refrigerator when his old one died. 3 credit card balances paid in full, none of which were mine. I once even pawned my wedding bangles when Vanessa's car needed urgent repairs. She never even said thank you. I didn't keep score, I whispered. "But he did," Miriam said coldly. "And in his mind you lost." That hit me hard. I left Miriam's house with a copy of the contract, an appointment for next week at the courthouse, and the slow-burning clarity that I had been enabling, not loving, my son. Back home, I opened a drawer I hadn't touched in years. It was full of receipts, old bank statements, wire transfers, records I had kept only out of habit. It took me 2 full days, 3 cups of coffee, and 1 pair of reading glasses to tally it all. $75,000 from the loan, $18,000 in credit cards, $12,200 for school fees, birthday parties, and travel emergencies, $5,600 for groceries and utilities when he and Vanessa were between jobs. And those were just the things I had proof of. In total, $110,800, not including interest. I sat back in my chair, eyes wide. How did I let it get this far? The next morning, I opened an account at a new credit union, one Vanessa didn't know about. I moved my pension and savings over. Changed my will. Called my financial planner. Protected everything. Let them mock me, I thought. Let them laugh again. I was about to become the most expensive burden Colin had ever carried. I printed 2 sets of documents. One was labeled court copy. The other went into a cream-colored envelope with a simple note paper-clipped to the front. "Colin, if I am a burden, then let me lighten your load, with facts. Love, Mum." It wasn't revenge. I didn't want to punish him. I just wanted him to finally see the weight I'd carried. And for once, to carry it himself. Later that week, I invited them both to dinner. Vanessa texted back a thumbs-up emoji. Colin called briefly. "Everything okay, Mom?" "Perfect," I said, with the calm of a woman who had already set the table and sharpened the knives, figuratively speaking. That night, before I went to bed, I sat in my chair with the envelope resting in my lap. It felt heavy, heavier than paper should be. Maybe because it wasn't just ink and numbers. It was years of sacrifice. Years of silence. Years of love misused. And now it was due. The thing about dignity is, It doesn't shout. It waits. It watches. It moves like water, gentle until it floods. For the next 2 weeks, I returned to being the mother they expected me to be. Soft-spoken. Smiling. Harmless. I brought over chicken soup when Vanessa said she had the flu. I offered to watch the kids one Saturday when their nanny canceled. I even baked banana bread and tied it in a ribbon, just like old times. Colin smiled a little wider each time. Vanessa went back to speaking to me with that distant tone. The one she uses for cashiers and Uber drivers. They thought I had forgotten. But I was listening. That Tuesday afternoon, I came by with a casserole. Colin wasn't home yet. Vanessa met me at the door in yoga pants and a messy bun, half glued to her phone. "Oh, it's just you," she muttered. I stepped in quietly and set the dish on their granite counter. The kids were watching cartoons in the next room. I smiled and went to wash my hands. That's when I heard it, Vanessa's voice, drifting from the hallway while she spoke to someone on the phone. "No, seriously. I don't know what the old bat expects. Colin won't say it, but we can't be supporting her forever. What is she now, like 70? And still showing up with casseroles like we owe her gratitude?" A pause. Then laughter. "She should be grateful we haven't put her in some cheap nursing home." I stood there, water running over my hands, not blinking. I didn't cry. I just turned the faucet off, dried my palms slowly on their monogrammed hand towel, and walked out without a word. At home, I opened my notebook and crossed out the last line of the speech I'd been drafting. I replaced it with something sharper. If being a mother meant giving everything, then consider this my final gift, accountability. I was done playing house. The next day, I visited the courthouse and officially filed the claim. The clerk raised her brows when she saw the defendant's name. "Your son?" she asked gently. I nodded. "My son." She didn't say anything else. Just stamped the papers and slid them back with quiet understanding. I didn't sleep that night. Not from anxiety, but from a strange sort of excitement. It felt like I had finally drawn a line in the sand after years of letting people walk over me with muddy boots. The summons would be delivered within the week. But I wanted one last gesture before the papers arrived. Not revenge, just clarity. A clean ending. So I invited them over. A proper dinner. No guests. No distractions. Vanessa texted back a thumbs-up emoji again. Always the emoji, never the decency of words. Colin called. "Everything okay, Mom?" "Perfect," I said. "Just want a quiet evening. Like old times." That Friday, I prepared everything just right. Table set for 3. Linen napkins. My best plates. The roast was slow-cooked to perfection, and the tart was chilled just so. But the centerpiece was already on the table. Sealed in a cream envelope, placed gently between the candlesticks. It wasn't about catching them off guard. It was about finally saying what had been stuck in my throat for years. The truth. At 6 on the dot, the doorbell rang. "Smells amazing, Mom," Colin said, kissing my cheek like nothing had ever happened. Vanessa walked in without making eye contact. "Oh, you even made dessert." I smiled warmly. "Of course. Sit. Make yourselves comfortable." Dinner was polite. Pleasant even. We talked about the kids, the weather, a new show they were watching. Vanessa spent most of it on her phone. Colin cracked a few jokes. I laughed even. But the whole time I could feel the envelope waiting. After dessert, I poured tea. And then slowly, I reached for the envelope. "What's that?" Colin asked, still chewing. I slid it across the table. "Just something I wanted you to read. Before the weekend." He picked it up, Vanessa leaning over his shoulder. The smile faded from his face in seconds. "What the hell is this?" Vanessa snatched the paper. Her eyes scanned the loan agreement, the spreadsheet, the interest table. She laughed. "You've got to be kidding me." I took a slow sip of my tea. "Not at all." Colin looked up, red-faced. "You're suing me?" "No, dear," I said calmly. "I already did." Vanessa scoffed. "This won't hold up in court. It's family." "It's a signed legal contract," I said. "And I've filed everything with small claims court. You'll receive the official notice next week." Colin's voice turned bitter. "Why would you do this? After everything I've done for you?" I leaned forward, eyes clear. You mean, after everything I've done for you? He flinched. You called me a burden, Colin. In front of everyone. You and Vanessa laughed at me like I was some leech on your perfect little life. I didn't say anything then because I was too stunned. But now I'm speaking. Vanessa stood up, hands on hips. This is pathetic. No, I said, rising. What's pathetic is biting the hand that fed you for decades. What's pathetic is mocking the woman who covered your debts while you posted vacation photos from Bali. Colin stood too, shaking his head. You don't have to do this. I already have. I said, my voice calm as silk. This isn't about punishment. It's about closure. I collected the plates without another word and walked into the kitchen. They didn't follow me. When I returned, they were still sitting there, silent. Thank you for coming, I said gently, opening the door. They left without saying goodbye. As I closed the door behind them, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt free. The house was quiet again. I stood at the front door for a long while after they left, hand resting on the wood, listening to nothing. No shouting. No guilt. No pretending. Just silence. The kind that follows a storm and makes you realize the air's finally clean. I cleared the table slowly, stacking the plates with care. The tart had barely been touched. Vanessa had taken one bite and pushed her plate away. It used to sting, her disinterest, her subtle cruelty. But tonight it felt irrelevant. I rinsed the dishes, wiped down the table, and packed the envelope back into its place. The real storm hadn't come yet. But it would. Once the court summons landed in their mailbox, there would be phone calls, arguments, maybe even pleading. But I had already decided. There would be no more rescues. No more speeches behind closed doors. No more forgiving without change. I sat down in the living room and listened to the old clock ticking above the mantel. It belonged to my mother once. She used to say, you can't get back time, but you can stop wasting what's left. The next day passed without a word from Colin. But on Sunday afternoon my phone rang. His name flashed across the screen, and for a second, I hesitated. I didn't want to hear the rehearsed apology. I answered anyway. Mom. His voice was tight. Yes, Colin. I got something from the court. I know. You filed this? For real? Over a loan from 10 years ago? I didn't answer his question. I asked one of my own. When was the last time you paid me back for anything I gave you, Colin? Just name one time. He paused. I could hear the wheels turning. Trying to remember. Trying to justify. I mean, you're my mom. That's what parents do. No, I said quietly. That's what I did. But that's not what you do. He sighed. This is going to mess things up for me, Mom. Vanessa's furious. Vanessa was never not furious, I replied calmly. She just didn't say it to my face until now. There was a long silence on the line. You're really going to follow through with this? Yes, I said. Because dignity doesn't retire when you become a mother. It just waits for its moment. He hung up without saying goodbye. That evening, I went for a walk around the block. The spring flowers were starting to bloom, daffodils mostly. Bright little things that dared to open even when the nights were still cold. A neighbor waved. A child on a scooter sped past. Life didn't stop for my decisions. It just kept unfolding. That gave me comfort. The next morning Miriam called. She said the hearing date was set. 2 weeks from Friday. She'd be there with me, of course. Even if I didn't need legal representation. You'll be fine, she said. Just tell the truth. The rest will speak for itself. I smiled. I'm counting on it. As the days passed, I received no updates from Colin. No apologies. No knock on the door with flowers and remorse. Just silence. But not the kind that hurt anymore. This silence was mine. The evening before the court date, I laid out my outfit. A navy skirt, a cream blouse, and the string of pearls Henry gave me on our 20th anniversary. I used to wear them to school board meetings when I had to speak with confidence. They still had that quiet weight to them, like a reminder of who I used to be before motherhood became martyrdom. I sat down at my vanity and brushed my hair carefully. My hands were a little slower these days, but steady. I looked in the mirror and said to myself, "You're not being cruel. You're being clear." It was the first time I fully believed it. Court day. The building smelled of paper and old coffee. Miriam was already there, waiting by the security check, holding a latte and that look she always had when she meant business. "You look like a woman who knows her worth," she said, handing me the coffee. "I finally do," I smiled. We entered the courtroom. It was small. Just a few rows of benches. No jury. Just a judge, a clerk, and a bailiff. Colin arrived 5 minutes late. He looked tired. Unshaven. He wasn't wearing a tie. Vanessa didn't come. He didn't look at me when he sat down. The judge glanced at our papers and called the case number. We stood. Miriam stayed seated, per my request. I wanted to speak for myself. "Mrs. Bennett," the judge began. "You're seeking repayment of a loan from your son?" "Yes, Your Honor." "And you've provided documentation?" "Yes." "Signed agreement. Records of funds transferred. A breakdown of totals." The judge skimmed the papers, nodded. "It appears in order. Mr. Bennett, do you dispute the debt?" Colin stood. His voice cracked a little. "It's just she's my mother. This shouldn't be in court. Families don't do this." I spoke before the judge could reply. "Families," I said clearly, "don't call their mothers burdens. They don't laugh at them at the dinner table after accepting years of help. I may be his mother, but I am also a person. A person who was used, dismissed, and expected to stay quiet." The judge looked at me carefully. Then at Colin. "Mr. Bennett," she said. "A loan is a loan. Family or not." The ruling was brief. Judgment in my favor. Full repayment, structured monthly. If payments stopped, garnishments would begin. Colin sat down, defeated. I didn't look at him. As we walked out, Miriam linked her arm through mine. "Do you feel lighter?" she asked. I thought about it. "No," I said. "I feel level." There's a kind of quiet that settles over you after you stop waiting for someone to do right by you. It's not sadness. It's not victory either. It's something in between, like waking up after a long nap in a house you didn't realize was burning down. 2 weeks after the court ruling, the first payment landed in my account. Just over $800 as ordered. It was strange seeing Colin's name attached to something so responsible. I almost didn't recognize it. But the money didn't make me feel better. It wasn't about the dollars anymore. It was about being seen, heard, accounted for. And so, I did something unexpected. I took half of that payment and wrote a check to Grace House, the women's shelter where I used to donate anonymously. This time I included a note. "In honor of Vanessa Bennett, may no woman ever feel powerless again." Petty? Maybe. But empowering? Absolutely. I mailed it with a steady hand and a smirk I didn't bother hiding. As for Colin, he didn't call. Not even after the second payment. I heard through June that Vanessa had left him. "Image ruined," she said. "People in their circle are whispering. You know how that goes." Yes, I did. I used to worry what people would say about me. But these days, I sleep soundly and sip my tea without wondering who's judging me from the shadows. I even took up something new. Volunteering. Miriam introduced me to a small legal aid clinic that helps elderly women navigate financial abuse. Some of them are just like I was, confused, ashamed, convinced that love means giving everything. I sit with them, hold their hands, and tell them what Miriam once told me. "You're not just a mother. You're a woman. And you matter." Some cry. Some laugh in disbelief. But all of them walk away taller. Funny how a courtroom and a casserole could lead to something like this. One Wednesday afternoon, I came home from the clinic, dropped my bag on the table, and looked around my little house. It was quiet, yes, but no longer empty. The living room smelled like lilies. My students used to bring me those. I had fresh-baked scones cooling in the kitchen, a new book waiting on my nightstand, and a note on the fridge from my neighbor's daughter. Asterisk. "Thank you for helping me with my scholarship essay, Miss Helen." Asterisk. I used to think my legacy would live only in my son. But now, I see it bloom in the smallest places. A smile from a woman I helped. A casserole I shared with someone grieving. A boundary I set. That night, I sat in my garden as the sun dipped low. The roses were blooming. Henry's favorite. I wore my pearls. Not for court. Not for show. Just for myself. As I sipped my tea, A breeze rustled through the leaves. I thought about the woman I had been. The one who washed dishes alone while her own child laughed at her from across the table. I thought about how easy it is to disappear in the name of love, and how brave it is to come back. In the distance, a child's voice called out. A bike bell rang. Life moving on. I smiled. Not because I won, but because at last, I stood up for me. Subscribe for more stories where silence finds its voice, and dignity takes the spotlight.